to give an analysis of how strong that stem is for exercise for my traps and rear delts, is I'll usually park the H, the farm-out H on a downhill, and I'll just do a cross pull like this with each hand and then turn and do this side too and get that beautiful upper back. All right, guys, hey, thanks for joining me today. Trying to get the mighty little combine that can through some very tough soybean conditions. The first thing in tough soybean conditions is our head. We have to do the best we can with the head, either adding aftermarket accessories, air bars, some beater belts on the reel that knock the material off the cutter bar, changing the angle or the direction of cut, whatever we can to reduce slugs on the head, because that's where our slugs are coming from, is the head. So the better we can do out there, the better the combine can do back here. And the other thing is your APS system. We get to the APS system, you can get key stocks from the factory. If you got really tough beans, I would get key stocks. If you got some old oval plates laying around, you don't use them anymore, go get some 1/2-inch key stock and weld on them things, and that square edge of the key stock is what actually helps tear them pods open. Can really help increase thrashing efficiency up front. Depending on what you have for APS, you can run your disawning plates open in tough to thrash. I know that sounds weird, but just keep an eye on stuff. If you're just getting so much unthrashed pods coming through the returns, then shut the disawning plates. If it's borderline pod toughness, you could try opening them, and maybe you do get a bunch of clean grain to come out at the APS and go right into cleaning and right into the grain tank and reduce our chance of grain damage. The cylinder, what I recommend guys do is keep that cylinder tight. So with my head, the 40-foot on the 570 in our crop mat conditions here and the speeds that I'm traveling, I would keep, I'm bouncing between 12 to 15 millimeter. And then my cylinder speed, I'm keeping him low, 450 to 500, somewhere in there. I've only made it a 1/2 acre, so I'm still dialing him in to get it perfect up in the tank. The reason that I tell people tight on the concave, I don't care what brand of combine, tight on the concave, because you got two things going on. One, if you run the concave very open, you more than likely have to speed up your thrashing system. And what you're doing is creating a perfect scenario to make a rope out of this crop. Let me grab when I'm talking about tough, the stems here, I gotta twist it to get it to tear. And even though it's tearing, a rope out of that crop mat, and by the time you do get a plug, you're gonna get caught. And when that plug plugs, it's gonna be in a spot you don't want to. Remember, on the Lexion, we've got the pre-thrash, you got your main thrashing, you got your pre-thrash, your main thrash, your impeller to feed your rotors. I want that plug here and stop this cylinder, so if I'm tight and slow, I can plug it here. I can lift the feeder house, open the rock trap, open the concave, 15 minutes, have that sucker dug out, back to cutting beans. Yep, might have put a smoke spot on my belt. That's okay, we still got a lot of tough beans to get through. We'll put a new belt on when we get to good beans. If we get this open, our concave open and our cylinder fast, that's how we bend cylinder shafts or twist cylinder shafts or drives shafts off, is by having a high-speed cylinder and letting a big old nasty slug come in there. That's when crap goes downhill fast. But that's when we get a slug back here, and that's when you hate life, because that one you're going to spend 4 to 6 hours digging a plug out of here. 40 feet at 4 miles an hour in soybeans, by the time this plugs and tells you that something's wrong, you've brought a lot of product in there. Oh, God help you. God help you. So slow and tight, and you don't break stuff, and it just works really well. I don't need to explain that anymore. The shoe. Fan, I go as fast as you can without carrying crop out the back. The cleaning shoe, or rotors. Rotors, I wind them up a couple hundred RPM faster because I want zero chance that this impeller has crop waiting to get into them rotors. So if I'm at 450 to 500 on the cylinder, I'll have the rotors at 700 and then fine tune them. I'll bring them down once we get things dialed in. But in the beginning, I don't want a chance of them things causing a plug right here. So I want them things fast, so any crop coming in, they're sucking it away from that impeller. And so, yep, that's how I like to run for initially setting up. The shoe, when we're in great thrashing, beans, corn, small grains, I run the bottom very wide open because I don't care. I want the bottom wide open and air is coming up, because with these combines, you can clean up with the chaffer, the top chaffer deck. You can clean up all your crops in good dry conditions. You just fine tune the top chaffer, and you get seed up in the tank. It doesn't matter the crop. It just works beautiful. In super to tough thrash crops now, so like these beans, you roll it in your fingers, you're pinching it hard, and finally it will tear open. So on these, I'm running that top. I got the long fingers on top. I'm going to have him somewhere between 5 and 8 millimeters, because we know we're not going to bounce a pod out the back. You know, that pod at 5 to 8 millimeters, this isn't going out the back, and beans aren't going out the back other than the fan carrying them if we got a very light test weight situation. Oh God, did I just bring up a test weight argument? Oh, please no test weight comments. But now I'm using the bottom. I'm using the bottom a lot in tough to thrash crops, because I'm balancing between how much I'm sending through returns versus what my grain tank looks like. So in tough to thrash situations, we can take advantage of that, you know, percentage of dock. You know, you can have a handful of pods and thrash and unthrashed pods in the tank and not get docked. Perfect gummy bear condition. So we're just kind of fine tuning that. We don't want to be sending too much thrash grain through our returns, so that's where we're also playing with the disawning plates up front as well. And so the bottom in tough conditions is doing all the work for me. If you actually do get a plug in the cylinder, I've done it the Klaas way. You loosen up the belt going to your impeller, take your bolts out of your 2-speed, run your cylinder away all the way slow, and then back up 10 or 20 RPM just to make sure that bottom spring-loaded variator has a good bite on the belt. And put the bolts back into low range, concave wide open, feeder house down, take that door off the top of the feeder house, and at idle, engage the separator. If it can turn it, it will vomit it. It just vomits right out onto that feeder house. And then you go wipe the feeder house off and turn it back on again and see if another chunk will come out. At that point, that's when I tighten the belt back up for the impeller drive and get ready. So when you engage it, it should go through the combine, because hopefully you haven't missed a plug at that point that's just sitting at the back of the combine. So you can see it too. If you're laying on that door, you can see that there's no big knob of crop sitting there waiting to plug the impeller, and if there is, you reach in and clean it out. Verify it's clean, then tighten your belt, and you should be back to work. You know, half hour, 40 minutes, you're back to work with the, you know, a small round bale worth of crop material laying on your feeder house. You throw it back in the head a little at a time and send it through, or throw it on the ground and pick it up with the head. I think that covers it pretty good. So guys, on that note, let's get combining. Well, that's what we look like so far. There's a few pods in there, not the worst in the world. Unthrashed ones means I can give a little more wind or I mean the thrashed ones, I can give a little more wind. There's a couple unthrashed ones, but yeah, we'll keep fine-tuning it. We'll jump in Big Sexy here. Doom, doom. Ooh, up to 1400 RPM. She's got a hell of a load behind her. So soft. Been so dry, but this West Rock soil is super soft. I got my France farm is just a couple miles down the road. That's the same way. He does a nice job. I like Gary. He's a good guy. He does a nice job with his waterways too. Instead of mudding through that quarter of an acre, just stay out of it. Does a good job there. The rest of them, I'll have to teach them how to do no-till beans because these are kind of miserable in this soft soil. I got to grab my wrench. I broke a sickle section. It's just starting to get good on the beans. Just starting. Car behind us. The sun's been out for just a couple hours. It's getting close to setting, and ain't that how beans go though? You know, you get that 1 hour in the evening when they're nice, and then you try and drive like heck, and they're gonna dry these soybeans. We dry beans quite often in this region, so it's nothing new. But it is what it is. It sucks, you know, it's an extra fee, but at the same time we can go today and get 16%, 17%, 14%. You know, you don't have to worry for the whole field to get to 14.5%. You can get them wet spots in there. And all right, well, let's go put that knife in and keep going. Literally one of my worst plugs yet. You can still see the crap in the head, and then you got a couple small square bales laying right there. Things started to get better, and then I dipped down into a low spot, wasn't paying attention, and oh boy, it was green, and it just grrr. You're like, oh, no big deal, and hit the reverser, and as soon as you hit the reverser, it didn't even move the auger, and you're like, ruh-roh, that's not good. So I brought it up here and dropped the head, and dropped the head, got the feeder house cleaned out, and that helped. That helped. So we're gonna find out where we left off here, and but yeah, all right.